Hi, I'm Nolan Peterson, CEO of Atlas Salt. We're developing the Great Atlantic Salt Project on the west coast of Newfoundland, aiming to supply de-icing road salt to critically underserved markets in the northeast US and eastern Canada and the Atlantic provinces.
No, I could see, it. Like I thought, a quick catch up because obviously this project is advancing nicely. You put a press release out about the kind of construction permitting and I guess general kind of corporate update. Love to talk to you about what's actually happening on the ground. So without further ado, maybe let's start with the construction thing. So can you kind of walk us through exactly what's happening on site since I spoke to you just a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so let's go back to February when we announced that we had started construction. It was a very important milestone for the project that we had switched from, pre-development capital to the capital that's actually included in our feasibility study. I think that's an important distinction for a lot of people, that this is now actual money that is actual permanent works, part of the actual project, not just getting ready for it. And that's a big milestone because a lot of mining companies don't get to that point. They talk a big game about getting to that point, but they don't actually put shovels in the ground, as it were. We had raised some working capital in the fall that had allowed us to start that construction. Recently, and that allowed us to continue our advance through March, April, May, June, and we were very, very happy to be doing that. We recently completed a financing, as you know, which has allowed us to continue to advance those activities. So we wanted to give the market a bit of an update to tell them what we had done and what we are doing and what we plan to do with the money that they had just given us. And so, we've cleared the site. We're doing earthworks preparation. We're doing some hydrogeological test work. We're planning for future activities like roads and berms and site infrastructure access. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. And also importantly, it kind of pulls activities that were planned, and we'll talk a bit about the financing portion of the update, were planned for once the financing was complete, but we pulled those activities forward. I think I've mentioned this to you before, detached them at this point in time, and actually capitalized on a very good summer season to be doing a lot of this work.
Okay. So I think you make a good point. I think I have a lot of companies come on here and talk about being shovel ready and construction ready without actually getting on it and doing the work.
Yeah.
So let's kind of miss some of the things there, but in terms of the kind of early works into kind of capital works program, can you maybe be a bit more specific about what's completed and what needs to be completed before the main mine can be built?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that needs to be completed for sure. The first thing we've done is we've cleared the site. We've of shrubbery, of trees, and the limited footprint that we have. We actually distributed a lot of the trees to the local community as well. They use that for firewood in the off season, actually in the summer too, I imagine, bonfires and whatnot. And then we started to clear the overburden and store that for later season or later usage. It's still valuable material. And will be valuable when we return the site during closure many decades from now. And then starting to create the subgrade preparation. So that's going down to the bedrock, finding out where it is, preparing the ground, setting up the terraces, putting in the ditch infrastructure for water retention, whatnot. We're going to be building roads, access ways to the site, the permanent road siting, getting ready for the site power infrastructure. Going forward in time, there will be pads to be constructed that will put permanent buildings onto, as well as the big one, which will be the excavation of the box cut, which will allow the drift access. That will be many months from now, though. But those are some of the big items to come.
Right. Okay. So do you see any sort of surprises in terms of, being able to do this in terms of like ground conditions and drainage and geotechnical behavior, etc.?
My engineers are saying it's a lot better than expected. The ground is a lot drier than we had initially anticipated. If that bears true going forward for the rest of the site, including the drift access, that could be a huge boon. I mean, we're doing, as you know, 1.5 kilometer drift. Every 5% easier this project gets is a significant time savings, capital savings, always potential, right? You never know for sure. But yeah, it's looking very positive right now, a lot better than expected on the groundwater and ground conditions.
Okay, and so in terms of the kind of I guess engineering risk between now and box cut / underground development phase, what are your teams sort of honed in on? What's important?
Well, the big
Getting
one
right.
for us is how stable the ground is, the ground conditions. The initial plan for this project, initial thinking many years ago was it's going to be an underground mine. We're going to construct it using traditional hard rock mining methods. The ground during the updated feasibility study process was determined through a geotechnical test work, geotechnical drilling work to be less competent than expected. And we included those designs, the accommodations and mitigations for that into the updated feasibility study. So that's the big key that we're looking at. What are the ground conditions? How saturated is the ground with water? Is it soft from moisture or is it dry? These are the things that we're working on. Again, I can't say conclusively right now what it looks like, but it is looking positive at the moment from the
Okay,
small
so
work we've done.
okay, because and it might be worth kind of skipping to the town development program, because where I want to be able to come back to with you is just trying to understand the kind of measurable construction milestones, as it were, because in terms of road completion and laydown and excavation, progress, procurement, all that kind of good stuff, it's going to be dependent on getting these permits locally. Now, you have been till now sort of doing sort of single permit approach with things. You've had a conversation with the town development team. What was that?
Yeah, so well, first of all, the provincial permits, we received an entire package approved for early works. That is encompassing over $150 million worth of capital activities that are part of the project development, so in the updated feasibility study. Now, the plan, the requirement of the environmental assessment that all permits fall under and the whole project falls under, is that we were to consult with and receive permits from the town to advance activities as we advance the project within the provincial permits that we'd already been received. Now, going forward, though, and that was the plan. Every road that we did, we were supposed to submit a plan to the town, and the town would review it. And little discretion, but they would sign off and say, yeah, you're okay to go. You're doing what you said you would do. It's and what we agreed to in the EA process, etc. They have since now come back and said, we don't want these piecemeal permits. Let's streamline this process. This is what we had originally wanted to do from the start. And we were happy to do it the other way. But now going forward, it's going to be a lot faster, reduce the administrative burden on both parties, and allow us to focus on building this site. So yeah, the whole early works permit now is synced up from the town with the provincial government, and we are advancing it. And we view that as a huge mark of support in the region, and it just basically goes to show that all the stakeholders want to make this project advance as quickly as possible by removing the speed bumps along the way, rather than throwing up more, which happens in a lot of jurisdictions elsewhere.
Right. And when you look at that sort of bundling, because I always think is how much discretion is there? Because if you kind of bundle in sort of 50 items and one item's not quite there, it holds everything up. Will there be discretion to have deal with that one that outlier, as it were?
So there's
Separately.
there's very little discretion at the permitting phase. We view it as kind of, the EA is what we had agreed to, what we have set out. And then from that comes conditions. And then conditions would be, you need to submit a permit, show us how you're going to build this now, show us that you've used the proper designs, that you're meeting your commitments in the EA, and you're meeting the local laws of the time and place, safety standards and everything. And if you are, you get your permit. And that's kind of the discretionary level that they have. At this point in time, there's no objection to the methods that we're using, as long as they match what we have already committed to beforehand. And so then you get your permit, and that applies to the town development permits as well.
And are you working together? Because I get that it's very collaborative, which is great. You'll be obviously documenting compliance as you go along. Do they have access to that during, so they can get comfortable during the kind of due diligence period?
Yeah, for sure. And we have they have a committee that has been established at the part of the local government, and they interface with our engineers and our on-site staff regularly. So we keep them informed of what we're doing, how we're progressing, how we're meeting our commitments. There was also news in our press release about the environmental monitoring that we've put in place. So yeah, there's active feedback in both ways, and it's all part of our social license, and we take very strong pride in that.
Okay. I think that kind of collaborative framework helps.
It's the only way to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's 100 places we could go. I saw you talking about bird nests and so forth. It really is quite detailed. But I'm not going to ask you about nest sweeps. I'm going to maybe jump back to what that actually means. Pleasure for both of us. What does that mean in coming back to the construction and execution around that one? Yes, as I mentioned, I'm sort of interested in meaningful, measurable construction milestones and how quickly they can come along off the back of that sort of approach with the town development permit.
It basically means we have over a year of work already approved to advance, and that lines up nicely with the next phase of permits, because during this period, we're going to be doing detailed design and engineering that will support the main capital development permit that will be required to do the drift development. So if we have commitment that we can build the box cut and create and prepare the site, and then we get the permits right on time, and then we can start the drift development and the project. Again, all these permits, the construction, it's all in my head. It's all about schedule, right? How quickly can we build the mine? How quickly, where's the possibility for delays or crushing the schedule or decompressing it? I'm fundamentally engineer, project management. That's what I'm thinking about. And this is all to allow us to sequence that very nicely. And that, of course, allows lenders to invest or provide capital, and investors to invest confidently, knowing that there's not going to be any hiccups. They never want to give you money and then have it sit there for 6 months because you're delayed, right? They'll just say, why didn't you ask me 6 months later? So we want to keep the wheels moving.
But likewise, when you, as an engineering hat on here, is doing surface works now, which will be kind of scrapped later. But so how much is reusable permanent infrastructure versus
all of
right?
Yeah,
okay, so it's not temporary construction anywhere.
No.
This is all reusable permanent.
This
okay.
is all part of the permit. This is all stuff we will be doing and we are doing as part of building the mine. Everything we're doing right now is coming out of the initial capital that is in our feasibility study.
But with any of these kind of works, there's always there's what you design and what you think, i.e. in the updated feasibility study versus, there may have to be sort of on the ground changes. So how much is the same as what you thought it was, and how?
Well, getting to that level of distinction, I guess at this, it's difficult. Nothing materially different at this point in time, I would say. Yeah, if a road was, is 1 degree off or something like that because there was a big rock in the way and we don't want to move it. Nothing like that is nothing beyond that at this point in time.
Okay. I mean, then when you're sort of looking forward, and obviously look at everything. There's things happening on the ground. You go forward with that, and I won't necessarily talk about money today. But what are the kind of big technical risks to kind of achieving that kind of 4 million ton per annum steady state production?
Still, it comes down to the technical side of the execution, right? Like, what are the ground conditions? How quickly can we advance the drift? How well can we execute on the plan? All that starts with now understanding exactly what the details look like, so we can start talking to the contractors and consultants who will build the mine, right? Feasibility estimates are estimates until we've put a detailed engineered plan into a contractor's hands, and then they can estimate the scope of work and how long it'll take, and then we'll get a good sense of that. So all of that's going to be happening as well in conjunction with the site work that we're doing.
The reason I like having these conversations with this level of detail at this point is because you've done a feasibility study, and if you're sticking broadly to the numbers and the processes in that feasibility study, then the financiers get kind of quite comfortable. If you have to change things, not even dramatically, if you change things enough to affect the economics of it, they start to doubt, don't they?
Yes.
So being on schedule, on time, on budget, all
Yeah.
good.
Well, I guess it also comes down to surprises, right? The more you can telegraph or have those discussions sooner rather than later, the better. Nothing worse than getting to the starting to drill your or start your drift development, and the ground is completely different than expected. So the sooner you start to see what the conditions are like, the sooner you start to amass that knowledge, the more comfortable you get, and the more comfort you can give your lenders and backers.
Okay, so I mean, to that point, as we said earlier, this is not we're not saying we're construction ready. We're getting on with it.
Yeah.
You've got to, because you've kind of got multiple parties mobilized and engaged, right? So how do you manage the kind of contractor interfaces, given that we're going to move in? Because most companies I talk to move from exploration, development, and conventional mining never kind of get to this point. So you have
Well, I have two engineers on staff as well as a site team we're building up as well. And this again is all part of starting construction sooner. So let's imagine that we got project financing at the end of this year, and then we started the work that we are doing right now at the end of this year. That means that we are ramping up very quickly. We're hiring people rapidly. They're onboarding at the same time that they're required to do work, and they're spending tens of millions of dollars of construction capital. And so that's not the best situation. The best situation right now is while we're ramping up slowly, by decompressing the schedule, we can hire the people now, put them in place now. They learn the culture of Atlas Salt. They start to put the processes in place. And then when we get the big capital surge, everybody is ready to take that football and dribble it up the field, right? To make it topical to what's going on in the world right now. But yeah, we have two engineers, Robert Booth, Bob the Builder, as we call him, is our gray-haired engineer. He's worked with Vale, Hudbay, Newmont, over 30 years of experience, $1 billion of worth of construction activity. He's kind of the head of the site activity. So he leads our project director, Andrew Smith. And again, we're bringing on some new engineers, and we have site staff as well, safety, contracts, admin, et cetera, as we build our team up. That's who's going to be executing the work. And I interface through them and get regular updates weekly, daily on what's going on at site, and of course safety and things like that. But that's kind of the structure. And we also have Hatch as our integrated project delivery partner that kind of is leading our detailed engineering and will fill in a lot of the gaps on the personnel side. We have an integrated project team.
Okay, so okay, it's like I don't. I mean, we talked last time at that length on the financing and so forth. You're moving towards that, and we can have a discussion about it again. So I think big moves for me today. So I think things happening on the ground, and obviously I do like the sound of this term. Development permit approach, because not just because the simplified process, but I guess the endorsement from them as to what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
interesting, very interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Nolan, I appreciate the update. Saw that. Just wanted to make sure things are advancing as planned seem to be. So stay in touch. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Matt. Anytime.